Welcome, everyone. This is Michael Blue, and you've connected to the Fellowship of Kingdom Professionals, the podcast, where we are cultivating makers and shapers of culture. Prepare for a riveting time in the principles and practices of the King and of his kingdom. You are about to be charged, challenged, and changed. I know you're ready. Let's go. May God bless you. This is Michael Blue of the Fellowship of Kingdom Professionals, and here we are once again. The theme that we began with last time was responding to the question, what is a kingdom professional? And I think we ended with a definition that a kingdom professional is the individual, male or female, who has accepted the truth. And when I say accepted, I don't just mean mentally assented. I mean, built his or her life around this or upon this, the truth that he or she was created by God to be productive. That is to be initiative or innovative. That is bring new things, new products, new services, new goods into being, or to take goods, services, and products that already exist, strategies, systems that already exist, and to do something new with them. Innovation. That's not all of a person's life. That's a major dimension of an individual's life. We talked about the fact that the distinction between what one would call a professional and what we are referring to as kingdom professional is simply that the individual who's the kingdom professional has a view toward the fact that his origin is in God. Her creation was in God. Purpose, plan, foreknowledge, predestination, all of that was in God. And we derive it, as you would suspect, from Genesis chapter 1:26, where God says, let us make man. And in verse 27, he creates man and then blesses man. We mean mankind, humankind, not just males. I'd like to call to your attention a period of history beginning at the 14th century, coming down into, I think some would say, a portion at least of the 17th century, referred to as the Renaissance. The Renaissance was a period during which Europe saw a flourishing and a flowering of culture, an upgrade and upsurge of achievement and accomplishment in almost every realm of existence. The great expeditions and explorations took place. The great, quote, discoveries of lands, territories took place. The inventions of technologies, the inventions of various products and so forth took place. The printing press was invented during that time, making possible mass production and mass publication of books, and in doing so, causing literacy to become much more accessible than it had been prior, because in prior times, books had to be painstakingly produced by hand. Manu is the Latin for hand, script, right? Handwriting. But with the Gutenberg discovery of movable press and print, mass production of books caused reading to be accessible, and therefore the production of books proliferated. Various other ways, various other means of which society moved forward. Science, the discarding of the geocentric view of the solar system or of the cosmos, and the embracing of a heliocentric view. All of that is a part of the Renaissance. Galileo does his thing. Uh, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, all of these are great Renaissance doers. And it is during this time that a phrase arises and is popularized, Renaissance man. A Renaissance man was that individual who excelled in arts and sciences, athleticism, politics, even religion. And that individual with all of that versatility was considered a Renaissance man. Or if we're going to include male and female, a Renaissance person. My friends, before the Renaissance man, one other comment. One of the best known individuals who was a Renaissance man is Henry VIII. Now, Henry VIII is probably best known for having had a multiplicity of wives, one after the other, after the other, after the other, seeking for a male offspring and producing only female offspring and blaming the wives when, as it turns out, the Y chromosome is offered by the male. So in other words, it wasn't his wives. To make a long story short, he did become the father of the greatest monarch of the British Empire, Elizabeth the Great, Queen Elizabeth the Great. But even though he's known for having a multiplicity of wives, he's known for getting in trouble with the Roman Catholic Church because the Pope would not sanction this particular divorce. And so he broke away and established what is now known as the Church of England, or the Anglican Church. But besides those things, Henry VIII was a very versatile man. He was an athlete. He was a scholar. He was into the arts and sciences. He was obviously a politician, and he was also a religionist. He was a Renaissance man. But may I say to you that before there was Henry VIII, there was David, the son of Jesse. We meet him in the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 16. We meet him, although God refers to him in 1 Samuel chapter 13. It's interesting that God talks about him. I won't go too far off in this. God talks about him in 1 Samuel chapter 13. We only meet him in chapter 16. I have a lesson that I've shared before titled, When God Talks Behind Your Back. God, in the 13th chapter of 1 Samuel, tells Saul that he's going to be deposed as king. He says he's going to be replaced by a man after his own heart. God refers to David as a man after his own heart. David is still a boy. That's what happens when God talks behind your back. He calls you what you shall be, even when you're not yet. And so we meet David in chapter 16 of 1 Samuel, and throughout the book of 1 Samuel into 2 Samuel, all the way through 1 Kings, into 2 Kings, and 1 Chronicles, into 2 Chronicles, the life of David. David is one of the three greatest of the Old Testament figures, and some would say the greatest. We won't argue about that today, but between Abraham, Moses, and David, they're the three greatest, okay? When we say greatest, we mean there's more biography on them, there's more influence in the culture of the Israelite people than any of them. And David has a versatility about him. Now, when we meet him as a shepherd boy, but we learn him later as a military man, as a warrior. And then he goes on and becomes a politician, becomes king over Judah first, and then king over the entire nation of Israel. And he brings Israel to the verge of a golden age that his son actually presides over. So he is a shepherd. He is a warrior. He is a politician. He is a statesman because he structures the nation, and he is a diplomat. He deals with the leaders of other nations. He's also an artist. He is a musician. He is a composer. and an arranger. Not only that, but he establishes the Davidic order. He actually introduces into the Levites and into the Levitical order of the priesthood levels that had not been there before. And he was not a Levite. That's one of the most amazing things about David. He was not a Levite, and yet God allowed him to interact with Levitical matters. And then not only was he a musician and an arranger, composer, organizer, but then he's also a prophet. He is an individual who is a supernatural seer and one who declares the mind of God. And then he's a designer, because the temple that we refer to as the Temple of Solomon is really the Temple of David. It was erected by Solomon's hand, but it was conceived in David's heart. It is David who said, I'm going to build God a house. And God said, no, you can't. You can't build me a house, because even though you've got good in your heart, you've got blood on your hands. And so he takes David's heart and translates it into Solomon's hand by means of giving David the blueprint, the design. And David stockpiles gold and precious stones and silver, all the rest. And so in a real sense, the temple that we refer to as the Temple of Solomon could also be referred to as the Temple of David and Solomon. David, before there was such a thing as a Renaissance man, was a Renaissance man. The word Renaissance, by the way, again, nay or nigh, is birth. What an interesting note that the Renaissance man is a man of the rebirth. What it's referring to is the cultural rebirth of Europe during, again, the 14th century down through the 17th century. But isn't it interesting, AD, but isn't it interesting that our premise for the kingdom profession is that he or she is going to be a Renaissance man or woman, a man or woman who has experienced rebirth or new birth. I wanted to bring this before you, though. I wanted to talk about the Renaissance man because the Renaissance man is diverse. The Renaissance man or woman is variegated in dimensionality. So are you. So are you. And the Renaissance man is not, in that, you understand the phrase, the Renaissance man is not just someone who dabbled in these areas. Oh no, the Renaissance man excelled in these various areas. Or in other words, this individual strove to be optimally productive. Not just productive, but optimally productive. That's really what I wanted to bring before you today. A kingdom professional is that individual who has accepted the fact that he's created or she was created by God to be productive. That is, to be initiative, bringing forth something new, or innovative, bringing forth something renewed. Yes. But when God said be fruitful, and we're closing for today, but when God said be fruitful, there was no death at that time. There was no decay. There was no corruption. There was no pollution at that time. And so when God said be fruitful, there was no ending attached to that. There was no closure or ending attached to that. Before there was sin, there was the mandate to be productive infinitely. My friend, God intended for each human to set something in motion that would exist and that would abound for all of eternity. God never retracted that mandate. It's called the cultural mandate. That's Genesis chapter 1. He did not retract that in Genesis chapter 3 when sin showed up. So in other words, there is a mandate on your life to be optimally productive, to be optimally initiative and or optimally innovative. We're going to talk again, but the kingdom professional is the one who understands I'm created by God to produce. That's one dimension. That's not the only dimension. That's one of the dimensions for which I was created, to be productive, initiative, or productive, innovative. And what I want to say to you is that not only is there the I in initiative and the I in innovative, but the I in infinite. God intended for the implications and the repercussions of your doings to have infinite impact. There's another I, if you will. We'll talk again. This is Michael Blue of the Fellowship of Kingdom Professionals, encouraging you to go forth today and lead. Make the name of Jesus Christ glorious. Make the career of Satan brief. There's another I word, infinitesimal. Okay, make it little and make it short. Brief and miserable. Together, let us bring pleasure to Christ's heart and fame to his name. May God bless you.
Thank you for listening to the Fellowship of Kingdom Professionals, FKP, the podcast. If you'd like more engagement, click the link in the show notes to join like-minded professionals in the FKP Facebook group. Follow us at Bishop M.A. Blue on all platforms. Finally, be sure to rate and review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. May God bless you until we meet again.